I sat at the dinner table when the envelope arrived, thin as paper but heavy as the future. My hands shook as I opened it. I saw the word "Congratulations," and my heart rose like a bird breaking free. Before I could read the rest, Patrick took it out of my hands. He did not smile. He did not hug me. He spoke in the same tone he used when giving orders. He said the family could only fully support one child, and he had already chosen Tyler. He said Tyler was the one who would stay, protect the family name, and carry their legacy forward. He said my dreams were only for myself, but Tyler's dreams were for everyone. I said, "This is my life." He looked straight at me and said, "Not anymore." It felt like a door slammed in my face. Tyler did not take my letter. He didn't need to. He already knew everything would now be redirected to him. My mother stared at her plate, silent as stone. I could not swallow my food. Shame burned under my skin like hot metal. I looked at the letter with my name that no longer belonged to me. I whispered in my mind, "I will remember this night forever." I meant it. The next morning, I walked to school, hugging my bag like it could still protect me. My favorite teacher saw the withdrawal form in my hand and stopped me in the hall. She begged me not to sign it. She said I had too much promise. I wanted to listen, but in my house Patrick's word was final. It felt like a law written in stone. My hand trembled as I signed. Seeing my own name on that paper felt like watching myself vanish. The office suddenly seemed colder, like it had already forgotten I was ever a student there. On my way out, I saw Tyler arriving for his own registration. Patrick had already moved every resource toward him. Tyler did not say anything. He didn't have to. We both knew my path had been cleared away for his. I carried boxes of books I was told I no longer needed. The walk home felt longer than any road I had ever taken. My eyes kept filling and blurring the world into water. When I reached home, my mother said, "Do not make this harder than it needs to be." I said nothing. Inside my head, I made a quiet promise. They had closed this door for me, but they would not write my ending. Not ever. My life flipped fast. 1 week I was thinking about classes. The next I was working long shifts like my future had been sold. I cleaned floors, packed boxes, and worked inside loud factory rooms where machines roared and the air tasted like metal dust. At night my legs shook from standing so long. Patrick collected my pay each week and called it for the house. He never thanked me. Tyler slept late, avoided chores, and called me the maid when he wanted to make me small. At night, I heard my parents talk. They called Tyler the future of the family. They said I was doing my duty. Their words erased me while I was still standing right there. I learned how to move quietly, how to swallow anger and make it disappear from my face, but not from my heart. Inside, a small voice stayed alive and stubborn. It said, "I am still here." One night, I pushed a small coin into the lining of my shoe. It was almost worthless as money but priceless as proof. It was mine. Each step pressed it into my skin, reminding me I still owned something. That tiny coin became my secret promise. I would not stay like this forever. I would find a way out. The favoritism in our house did not hide. It sat at the table with us. Tyler failed classes and still received tutors, new books, more fees paid without question. People called him gifted even when he barely tried. When I burned dinner once or forgot a small task, I was treated like a curse on the family. One night, I asked Patrick why Tyler's failures were forgiven and mine were remembered forever. His answer was calm, almost gentle. Somehow that made it worse. He said Tyler was the one who would carry the family name and protect the legacy. He said I was too independent and would leave one day. He said investing in me made no sense because I would belong to another life. His words explained everything and broke something inside me at the same time. I stopped chasing fairness and started building escape. After work, I used an old cracked phone to learn coding by myself. The videos froze and the battery died, but I kept going. The computer did not care whose child I was. It only cared if my code worked. For the first time since my admission was withdrawn, I felt the future again. It was faint but alive. Weeks passed. I learned piece by piece, mistake after mistake, refusing to stop. Then one night my small program finally worked. The screen lit up exactly the way it was supposed to. I stared at it, shocked, then covered my face and cried. Not loud, just steady, shaking tears. No one else knew. No one else cared. But I did. I had made something real. Soon I found a small freelance job online. The money was tiny, but it was mine, earned by my mind instead of my body breaking down at work. That mattered more than anything. I hid this new life like a flame cupped in both hands, so wind could not blow it out. Patrick still talked about Tyler as the pride of the family. Tyler still walked like the world owed him soft landings. They did not see the girl in the next room, quietly teaching herself how to rewrite her life. I went to sleep each night with sore feet and bright hope fighting inside my chest. I, Ariana, was not gone. I had been pushed aside, ignored, and counted out. But under all that silence, I was still building. And one day they would see what they threw away. The night everything finally broke open came after dinner. Patrick cleared his throat the way he always did before delivering a family decision. Tyler said he wanted to drop school and start a business. He sounded excited, not ashamed. Patrick didn't scold him. Instead, he turned to me. He said I would keep working to fund Tyler's new dream because Tyler was still the chosen one, still the future of the family name. Something inside me stopped bending. It hardened. I heard myself say one word I had never dared before. No, the room exploded. I was called selfish, ungrateful, poisoned by pride. They talked about loyalty and duty. I didn't shout back. I just repeated, no. Patrick pointed at the door. He said if I would not obey, I should leave his house. I waited 1 second, hoping someone would say my name or ask me to stay. No one did. I packed my worn clothes, my cracked laptop, and the small courage I had left. My hands shook the entire time. My heart hurt, but my decision did not. I stepped outside into the dark. The air felt cold and sharp, but it was mine. For the first time, so was my life. No one followed me. No one called out. The house light glowed behind me like an eye that had already decided to look away. I walked under streetlights until my legs ached. A friend let me sleep on her couch. The fabric smelled like detergent and dust. I stared at the ceiling for hours, afraid and free at the same time. The next day, I sent job applications everywhere I could think of. Most never replied. Some said no without kindness. I kept going. Early one morning, my phone buzzed. I thought it was spam. It wasn't. A tech startup program in Silicon Valley wanted to interview me. I read the message again and again while my heart pounded like a drum in my chest. Every secret night of learning, every hidden hour of work had opened a real door. I whispered yes into the quiet room. I practiced interview answers in the mirror, staring at a face that looked tired but determined. I was no longer the girl who had everything decided for her. I was someone who had already walked through fear and kept moving. Whatever happened next, I was not going back to being small. The interview happened on a video call. My hands shook beneath the desk, but my voice stayed steady. They asked how I learned without school and why I didn't give up. I told them the truth. I said my family chose Tyler as the golden child and called him the legacy. I said they withdrew my admission and redirected every resource to him. I said I worked and studied in secret anyway. They didn't pity me. They respected me. When the call ended, they offered me an internship with real growth. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I said yes. When Tyler heard, he laughed and said I would play with computers for pennies. Patrick said nothing at all. That silence was deeper than anger. I packed anyway. On the bus out of town, I cried quietly, not from regret, but from release. I pressed my forehead to the window and watched my old streets fall away. On the plane, when clouds covered the ground, I told myself something simple. No one gets to choose my life for me again. Not Patrick. Not Tyler. Not anyone. California felt like another planet. The buildings were glass and light. The offices buzzed like beehives full of ideas and stress. I joined the intern group and pretended I didn't feel out of place. Inside, I was terrified. My first tasks went badly. My code broke. I misunderstood tools I had only seen on videos. Fear wrapped around my chest, tight and heavy. A senior engineer noticed that I stayed late every night instead of quitting. She helped me, not with pity, but with clear explanations. I wrote notes, fixed errors, then fixed them again. Slowly, fear softened into focus. I was no longer the forgotten daughter sweeping floors. I was Ariana who solved problems. My manager said that if the next product launch went well, I might receive a permanent position and equity. Hope pressed hard against my ribs. I didn't tell my family. This dream belonged to me alone. I guarded it like a flame that had finally found oxygen. I worked harder than I ever had, not to prove anything to Patrick, but to honor the girl who refused to disappear. Launch week was a storm of screens, coffee, and exhaustion. Everyone moved fast. Every mistake mattered. I was assigned a feature others thought was small. I treated it like the heart of the whole project. I rewrote sections again and again, testing until my eyes stung. I slept little and dreamed in lines of code. When the product finally launched, the response was immediate. Users loved the exact feature I had owned. My team cheered. My name was called again and again, not as an afterthought, but with respect. Soon the company raised new funding. Because of my work, I received a bonus and stock worth more than I had ever imagined in my old life. I went home that night and sat on my bed in the dark. I cried, hard, my hands over my face. I wasn't crying from sadness. I was releasing years of silence, years of being told I was less. I thought of Patrick calling Tyler the future and calling me duty. I didn't feel revenge. I felt something stronger. I had proof that I was never the background of anyone's story. I had built my own future with my own hands, and no one could take it now. Silence from home lasted a long time. Then one evening my phone lit up with Patrick's name. My chest tightened, but I answered. His voice sounded exactly the same as before, firm and heavy. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't apologize. He said Tyler's business ideas had failed. He said debts were piling up. He said the house might be taken. Then he called me the family's last hope. Those words cut deeper than shouting ever could. I listened without interrupting, feeling old scars reopen inside me. He spoke like help from me was automatic, like my life was still part of his plans. When he finished, I said I would visit. He sounded relieved, not grateful. After the call, I sat in the dark apartment and let the silence stretch. They weren't calling because they finally valued me. They were calling because they needed me. Even so, fear didn't know me anymore. I was not the powerless girl who signed away her admission. I was Ariana who had built her future from nothing. I bought a ticket home with steady hands. No shaking. No begging. I was going back, but not to return to the life they chose for me. I was going back to face it. Coming home felt like walking into a photograph that hadn't changed while I had grown older inside it. The same paint, the same road, the same door. My mother looked at me as if I were someone she almost recognized. Tyler barely met my eyes. Neighbors suddenly smiled and praised me as so strong and so smart. Their words tasted hollow. They had watched me leave with nothing. At dinner, Patrick spoke about saving the family legacy, like it was something sacred locked inside him. He talked about our name, our image, what people would say. It sounded like a speech he had practiced. I didn't argue. I simply said, I need to see everything before I decide anything. The room fell silent. They were used to my agreement, not my conditions. That night, I sat in my old room where I once cried over lost chances. The walls felt smaller than I remembered. I touched the desk where I had once planned for college and whispered to the girl I used to be. I came back, but I am not yours anymore. For the first time, the room didn't own me. I owned my choices, and that changed everything. The next morning, I asked Patrick for every financial document. He stalled, then finally brought them out, stacking them on the table like broken promises. I read carefully. Bills, threats, letters with bold red warnings. Then I froze. A loan sat in my name. The signature matched mine perfectly, down to the curve of a letter. Except I had never signed it. My hands went cold. I kept reading. Tyler had lost large amounts of money gambling and chasing empty business ideas. No one met my eyes. Shame filled the room, but none of it was spoken. I stepped outside because the air inside the house felt thin and sharp. I called a lawyer with a calm voice I did not recognize as my own. By the time I went back in, I knew exactly what had been done to me and exactly what I was going to do about it. Something inside that had once begged for love finally stopped begging. It stood up. It chose itself. And it wasn't going to sit back down again. Later, my mother came into my room and closed the door softly. She didn't scold. She didn't shout. She looked tired in a way I had never seen before. She told me the truth I had already guessed. Patrick had chosen Tyler because he believed Tyler would stay, carry the name, and protect them as they grew older. She said I was too independent, that I would leave one day, that investing in me felt risky. All of this had been planned around legacy, not love. She cried, but her tears weren't for what I had suffered. They were for the plan failing. That realization hit harder than any slap. It meant my pain had been a cost they accepted. I told her that my life was mine now. I said I would not shrink anymore to fit the space they left for me. She looked at me like she was seeing someone unfamiliar. Maybe she was. The obedient girl, she remembered, no longer existed. I had grown beyond the walls that tried to hold me. I was done asking for space. I was taking it. That night we sat in the living room, the four of us, with the air thick and heavy. I asked one question I had carried for years. If I had failed, would any of you have cared? No one answered. Silence spoke for them. I told them about the long shifts, the nights I walked home alone, the pay Patrick took without thanks, the way I was treated like background while Tyler was praised for breathing. Patrick slid papers toward me and said I should sign part of my earnings over to him so he could manage the family's future. He spoke as if it were obvious. I pushed the papers back with steady hands. I said, no, the word did not tremble this time. It stood strong. Patrick's eyes narrowed, confused that his control no longer worked. My mother watched without speaking. Tyler scowled, as if my refusal was an insult to his comfort. For years they had seen me as the support beam of the house, something strong but silent. Now they were realizing I was a person who could walk away. The realization scared them. It freed me. I sat there calm, knowing I would not sign away my life again. Patrick's anger rose like heat in the room. His voice turned sharp as broken glass. He said if I refused to sign, he would disown me completely. Years ago, that threat would have shattered me. Now it sounded small compared to everything I had already survived. I looked at him and said he had already disowned me the night he chose Tyler's future over mine. The room went silent. Then I told him something else. The forged loan in my name had already been challenged by my lawyer, and my identity was now protected. No one would ever use my name again without my consent. Shock spread across Patrick's face, followed by fear he couldn't hide. My mother covered her mouth. Tyler stared as if seeing me for the first time. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I simply refused to be controlled. In that moment, the balance that had ruled our house for years finally broke. Patrick realized that the girl he once ordered around was gone. The woman in front of him did not need permission to live. The power he thought he owned had slipped out of his hands, and he knew it. Tyler exploded next. His words came out fast and wild. He said, I thought I was better than everyone. He said everything I had belonged to the family name and that I owed them my success. His voice shook with anger, but under it I heard fear. I looked at him and spoke quietly. I told him I became what he was given and wasted. He stopped talking. For the first time he had no answer. His face went red. He slammed the door and stormed out of the house. A neighbor heard the shouting and recorded part of it. By evening, whispers spread everywhere. People talked about the golden child and the daughter who had been pushed aside. Patrick hated gossip, and now it covered the whole neighborhood like smoke. The story no longer lived only in our walls. It had escaped, and it wasn't coming back. Instead of feeling ashamed, I felt strangely light. The truth was finally outside, no longer locked in my chest. Secrets had ruled our house for years. Now daylight had finally reached them, and nothing looked the same. The next morning I spoke calmly without shouting. I said I would help with the debt only under one condition. They had to admit what they had done and promise to end the pattern of choosing one child as everything and another as nothing. They had to say it in front of the extended family, not in whispers, not in private. Patrick refused at once. Pride wrapped around him like armor he had worn for years. He said family matters should stay inside the house. I told him the damage had never stayed inside the house. It had shaped my entire life. My mother surprised us both when she said she would apologize publicly. Her voice shook, but she meant it. The room fell silent. A crack opened in the old structure that had ruled my childhood. I didn't push further. I simply waited. For once, they were the ones who had to move toward me. Power had shifted without shouting or force. It had shifted because I stopped begging. I saw fear and confusion in Patrick's eyes as he realized the old rules no longer worked. I wasn't his obedient child anymore. I was someone he could no longer command. The extended family gathered in our living room. Chairs lined the walls. Conversations stopped when I stood. I felt my heart pounding hard, but my voice stayed steady. I told my story from the beginning. I spoke about the admission they made me withdraw. The work that broke my body, the silence I was forced to live in, the secret studying, the internship, the product launch, the forged loan, and my return. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I spoke clearly so no one could pretend they misunderstood. When I finished, the room went completely still. People looked at Patrick, not me. The image of the strong, wise father cracked in front of everyone. Tyler stared at the floor, unable to meet anyone's eyes. My mother wiped tears from her face, but did not deny anything. For the first time, the truth was bigger than excuses, bigger than legacy, bigger than fear. It filled the room and left no space for lies. I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. The story that had once trapped me was finally out in the open, where it belonged. Patrick tried at first to defend himself. He talked about tradition, about pressure, about what people expected from him as a father. The relatives did not accept it. They asked him if tradition justified breaking a child's future. He fell silent, his shoulders lowered as if he were suddenly carrying the real weight of what he had done. His voice cracked when he finally spoke again. He said he had been wrong. At first the words sounded stiff. Then they softened. He apologized for choosing Tyler over me, for taking my chance, for treating me like support instead of family. Tears slid down his face. Not tears to control anyone. Tears from finally seeing the damage clearly. I listened without rescuing him from his guilt. I accepted the apology, but not the old roles. I told him forgiveness did not mean going back to how things were. It meant I would no longer carry his choices on my back. A strange calm filled me. The chain I had dragged for years finally felt lighter. I didn't need revenge. I needed freedom, and I had finally taken it. That night, I walked through the house like a visitor wandering through an old dream. Every room held a version of me that no longer existed. I saw the girl who obeyed without question. I saw the girl who cried quietly into her pillow so no one would hear. I saw the girl who still hoped Patrick would one day choose her too. I stood in the doorway of my old room and felt both sadness and distance. I loved who I had been, but I didn't belong to that life anymore. I lay on my bed and stared at the cracks in the ceiling I used to count like stars. For the first time, they meant nothing. Morning came quiet and clear. I printed papers, filled forms, and gathered everything I needed. My decisions were no longer driven by anger or the need to prove anything. They came from a calm center I had built through pain. I knew what I would do next, and I knew I could live with it. I didn't need anyone's permission. I didn't need anyone's blessing. I was finished trying to fit into a place that had never made room for me. The next day, I went to the bank and handled the debt myself. I paid the house loan directly so no one could twist it into more control later. My name was finally clear, free of forged signatures and unpaid threats. I walked outside and felt lighter than I had in years. Then I donated the furniture from my childhood room, letting it go hurt in a quiet way, but it also felt right, like shedding a skin I had outgrown. I used part of my earnings to set up scholarships for children who were overlooked the way I had been, the ones who were told someone else mattered more. I didn't design the program around golden children. I built it for the forgotten ones. I did not fund Tyler's broken plans or gambling debts. That was not cruelty. That was truth. People must learn to carry their own weight. Patrick watched me sign the final document. For the first time, there was no command in his eyes, only understanding, maybe even respect. I walked out of the office into bright sunlight and realized something simple but powerful. I wasn't tied to their legacy anymore. I was building one of my own. Tyler came to me later that afternoon. His anger was thinner now, stretched over fear. He asked me to rescue him, to fix his life the way everyone always had. He talked about chances, about how things were supposed to work for him. For a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, lost under the man he pretended to be. I told him no, not loudly, just firmly. I said he had to work, fail, and rebuild, the same way I had done when everything was taken from me. I said I would not carry his choices anymore. He stared at me like the ground had shifted under his feet. Then he turned and stormed out again. This time, the slam of the door didn't echo inside me. I didn't chase him. I didn't cry. His life finally belonged to him. His future finally rested on his own effort. I hoped he would grow from it. Growth hurts. It breaks pride before it builds strength. But it was the only honest path left for him. I felt sadness and peace at the same time. I had spent years carrying others. Now I was finally carrying only myself. Patrick asked to speak to me alone that evening. We sat in the same room where he once said my life was no longer mine. It felt smaller now, like the power had drained out of it. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't command. He asked, in a quiet tone I had never heard from him, what my decision about us was. I took a breath and told him the truth. I said I chose my own life. I said I forgave him because I didn't want anger to live inside me forever, but I would never again be anyone's sacrifice for legacy or image. Forgiveness, I told him, was not the same as returning to obedience. He nodded slowly. His eyes were wet, but he didn't hide it. For the first time, he wasn't the judge of my choices. He was just my father, flawed and human. When I stood to leave, he said, "Take care of yourself, Ariana." The words were simple. They were real. I walked out of that room and felt like a door had closed gently behind me, not trapping me but letting me go. I returned to Silicon Valley, to the glow of screens and city lights that pulsed like a living heart. My office window looked over buildings that once terrified me and now felt like home. I placed my hands on the glass and let the view sink in. I sent one final message to my family. I wish you healing, but I will never again be your sacrifice. Then I set the phone down and smiled. I kept a promise I made on a night full of shame and stolen dreams. I built a program for students denied chances through favoritism, control, or silence. I named it after the acceptance letter I once lost. The name used to hurt, Now it felt like victory. My story did not end in bitterness or revenge. It ended in something stronger. I had turned pain into direction, silence into voice, and loss into power. Patrick's idea of legacy no longer defined me. I carried my own name, my own work, my own future. For the first time, the path ahead was wide and real. I was not the forgotten daughter anymore. I was Ariana. I had chosen my life, and I was finally completely free.